This video is about Nigerian fuel subsidies, and it gives us an example of the impact the price controls can have on a market. Let's give some of the facts underlying the price controls in Nigeria. Now, although Nigeria is the largest oil producer in Africa, its petrol refineries are actually run down. And so it has to import its own petrol for domestic use. Now, in order to try and understand this, we need to first notice that the Nigerian government actually fixes the price of petrol. In 2011, it was about 44 US cents per litre. And this was below the world price, which was roughly about 3 times higher. And now this causes quite a lot of distortions. The first one, which is particularly apt in the Nigerian situation, is that the price ceiling creates supply problems which are associated with corruption. And we'll see why, how the market situation it provides an incentive for that corruption. The other problem is the distortion comes in the form of long petrol queues. And probably the most important distortion, and one that's increasingly crippling the Nigerian community, and that is that in order to pay for the imported petrol, the government has to pay subsidies, which of course has an opportunity cost. That monies could be used for building more schools or improving the medical system or the roads or whatever. So there are opportunity costs of the taxes that are used to import petrol. Now let's look at the situation in a graph, and graphs normally help us focus our attention on some of the causes of the problems we see. This graph is a normal supply and demand graph of a purely competitive market where the price settles at PE and at the intersection of the supply and demand curves at point E. And the price PC is the ceiling price that the government sets for petrol. And what that implies is that petrol stations legally cannot sell petrol at a price higher than PC. So in other words, the price is stuck below the market equilibrium at PE. So customers are able to purchase the quantity Q2 at that price. And quite obviously, if the price were higher, fewer people or fewer fuel will be purchased. And so the low petrol prices are popular and vote winning for customers. On the other hand, of course, domestic refineries can only produce or only prepared to supply Q1, which is somewhat less than Q2. So there's obviously a shortage of petrol from domestic sources equal to the distance AC. And the other consequence, of course, is that at the low price, there's little incentive for domestic suppliers of petrol to maintain their refineries in peak condition. So they become run down, they don't modernize. And so the shortage AC is met by imported petrol, as I said, despite the fact that Nigeria is a very large producer of crude oil. Now, if we take a look at the demand curve, as we said, no one is supposed to pay more than PC, But the demand curve suggests that there are a lot of people to the left of point C prepared to pay a higher price and obviously avoid any inconvenience created by the shortage. So there's an incentive to sell to those people who have a higher reserve price. And in fact, the incentive even extends to selling that petrol illegally in adjoining countries. So if we look at a map of the countries that surround Nigeria, we can see that the petrol price in Nigeria is 44 US cents. But in Niger and in Chad, the petrol price is as high as $1.11. And even in Cameroon, it's close to the international price. And so that, and in Benin, it's also higher. So there's a strong incentive for someone to purchase petrol at 44 cents and smuggle it across the borders surrounding the country. So this low price provides an immense incentive for the people who supply petrol domestically, who also have the license from the government to import it. They have a strong incentive to hoard petrol and not supply it to these people at PC, but to supply it to those people up who are prepared to pay a higher price, and even to smuggle it abroad. And so one of the horrific consequences of this is the shortage causes long queues. And the video that we showed from Al Jazeera after this illustrates that quite graphically.
Anger and frustration boiling over at a petrol station in Lagos, Nigeria. These men are being told the fuel is finished. It's a paradox that citizens of Africa's largest oil producer can't get fuel. Fuel scarcity is on the verge of bringing parts of the nation to a grinding halt. Hundreds of thousands of people have spent days waiting to buy fuel in queues stretching for miles.
I've been here since yesterday. I slept here because of fuel.
Why there appears to be no fuel is complicated.
The price of petrol at the pump in Nigeria is fixed by the government at around 65 naira a litre. That's about 40 US cents. But because none of Nigeria's oil refineries work, the country is forced to import fuel.
Getting it to the pump involves a complex maze of importers, transporters of fuel, and retailers, all seeking to make profit above the fixed price of 40 cents a litre where they can. This slows down the availability of fuel at the pump, creating the false impression of scarcity. At this petrol station, the manager tried to get the police to stop us filming. Customers told us station attendants are charging a fee to get in, and instead of charging 40 cents per litre for fuel, they're charging $1. Those who can't wait for 3 or 4 days at a petrol station are forced to buy fuel on the black market for up to $3 a litre.
The consequence of having a regulated regime and having a fixed price for petrol is it allows for rent seeking and corruption and hoarding and so on.
And on why all Nigeria's oil refineries are broken down?
It's sad.
The root of the problem is that Nigeria's government is planning to stop fixing the price of fuel, which means the industry will be subject to market forces. Many retailers are hoarding subsidized cheap fuel they have in stock, in case the price goes up and they can make more money. But they're telling customers there's no fuel.
Everybody that has been enjoying government subsidy needed to get set for the deregulated environment. They need to be sure that when that whistle is blown, they are well positioned to make money or additional profit.
And so for the average consumer, that will mean the price of oil will go up, but be more readily available. Ibandege, Al Jazeera, Lagos, Nigeria.